Let's get started here. So, what I'm fixing to talk about, and it's going to be extremely controversial. So, I guess I'll apologize now for all of you it offends. Uh, just know that I'm not here to worry about your feelings because I ain't bringing mine into it. Now, there are those of some of you that's going to look at some of this and say, well, that's your feelings. And I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to argue with you about any of it. What I'm going to help you see is that if you've watched the first video, which is Yahuwah is Yahusha, which, well, I probably should have just named that the Son with a question mark. A lot of people get offended by that whole Yahuwah is Yahusha thing. They still have that separation mentality. When he clearly says, I and my Abba are one Echad, they can't get around that. And if they'll kind of go watch that video, they can get a better understanding of it. They may still not, but they'll go into the next one, which is Genesis 1. That'll help them, kind of wrap back around again. That's what I keep doing. I keep going back into these, kind of reiterating how it all ties together. And this is why. When I started on this about 10 years ago, after a 30-day fast, that was pretty cool. I started learning, and while I was in my fast, I was just always in misery because I was so sick all the time, and I didn't know why I was so sick. So I knew there was three things that wouldn't make me sick. So that's the three things that I consumed: black coffee, water, and sweet tea. So, um, needless to say, when you ask for the truth, no matter what the cost, sometimes you don't realize what knowing the actual truth is. That's where what I'm going to share with you today kind of comes in. I wanted to learn the first 3 years. I was so excited. Most people that come into this are because we've been seeking something. We don't really buy, what the mainstream has taught us, and that doesn't matter which mainstream you want to go to. I don't care. I'm not biased to none of them. I'm just, showing you what the scripture says, and y'all, you know, argue with it all you want to. I'm not the one that you're arguing with. Principalities and spiritualities, that's the principles of the spirit. That's all you've got, nothing else. So this is something that, it's so controversial. You won't almost have to say, well, where else would it come from? It's like, well, there's other people that's seen it. So why am I making a big deal out of it? Well, for that first 3 years, all I got to read was Genesis 1, 2, and 3. And finally, one day I said, please just let me study something else. Because every time I went to study something else, I ended up back there. Only to find out that starting at Genesis 4, 1, everything from there all the way to Revelation leads right back to what happened in Genesis 1, 2, and 3. So that's kind of, what the other two videos are about. I try not to put in any sort of, teacher mentality. That's not what I'm wanting to be. I'm just here to try to give some clarity. So maybe it'll help some people. It may not. It may make some people mad. It may even have people even call it heretical, but I don't really care. I'm not here to to make any salvatory ideas about what anything is. I'm not the judge. I don't want to be the judge, and I'm very thankful that I never get that opportunity. What I do know is that there is the Father, the omnipresent Ruach, that does exist in the form that he takes, known as Elohim. It's part of what you need to go look at when you're go back and watch that first one especially. It's an hour and 22 minutes. I can't put it on TikTok. This one might get over 60 minutes. I may not get to either, but oh well. I'm going to put it out there and he'll guide to whoever needs to see it. So I've established this twice now. This will be a third time that the Ruach took a presence, a Elohim, only El formed, the firstborn, the Ruach took Elohim, known as Emmanuel. We went through that too, but who is at this point Yahuwah, doing the will of the Abba, that all things are created by and through, that we read about in Colossians. So let us, who is us? When you understand the Ruach working through the form, the Son, all things that were created by and through, our Maker and Husband and Redeemer. See, when y'all separate them, you get into a hard to understand right here. You come into this. This one guy taught that, well, that's the Son sitting there watching the Father, make the ball and throw it out. Golly, people. But I used to believe all that ball mess too. I mean, I get your position, but you're in the age of knowledge, so you shouldn't have excuses. I mean, it can be proven in more ways than your Nasa can ever try to prove to you through its pictures. So anyways, the let us now is understood. The Ruach working through the form, us, the Son, make man. Now that's a little ill, deservedly. But it goes on to say, in our image. Now, this is pretty interesting. If you've seen me, you've seen the Abba. Okay. Now, it doesn't tell us that Adam was created in his image or his likeness. That's fine. We might get into some of that here in just a minute, which is going to be extremely controversial. But let's start with this. Our image. Okay. So that's the Ruach working through the Son, that all things are created by and through, the form, the man, except he would be an uppercase man, but because he is the man. For those of you wondering where all that comes from, he's the man. That's who he is. There's those that want to make him out to be just a man, and in flesh he was. But you got to keep in mind that by having a flesh suit that the Ruach could dwell in on the darkness, the earth, you can see why the Son, S-O-N, is capitalized. But in this instance, it's lowercase man. In their image, how they look like a man. That's why he can say that, because Adam, we'll get into in a little bit, is also a man, but he is named Adam, which actually means man in Hebrew. So it's pronounced Adam. But I mean, anyways, we'll get into some of that. But I want y'all to hang on to that, because it goes on to say, according to our likeness. Now, what do you reckon that likeness is? Because, I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's a distinguish our image, comma. I guess you could put and here. I'm not trying to, but it just goes on to say, according to our likeness, comma. So that's another statement. Why is likeness different. Well, doesn't Shaul speak about us being dwelled in the spirit, the Ruach, the Abba, to become that likeness, that form or image? I mean, think about something. When Adam got kicked from the garden, what did he actually know other than the word, which, when given to Moshe, became the Torah? What else did he know? He didn't know nothing else. He couldn't know nothing else. No matter how long he lived. Y'all debate about the time he was on the earth in the garden, but he didn't know anything else. He walked in the cool of the day with Yahuwah. You think he was teaching him worldly things? No, he wasn't. He was teaching him the word, the truth, right? But the image and likeness, what is that likeness? Well, that likeness would be what we just spoke about. Now, keep in mind that it doesn't tell us that about Adam, but we know Adam was obviously taught that. Adam was definitely created for something else because he was set in the garden and the animals were brought to him to be named. None were found to be an helpmeet before the womb woman came from his side as though it's part of him. They try to make it out to be a rib, just like they try to make it out to be an apple, and it's not even thought of like that in Jewish heritage. But that's just the whole English version of a lot of this deception I'm trying to talk about. But when he says that our image and then our likeness, that has precedence for a reason. Now go back and watch Genesis 1 and you'll understand that this is a recreation of them in the water on the earth, walking with Elohim and the angels, living the word that was in the beginning. You know, go back and watch all that. Don't start yelling and get mad at this video. Come into this with a different mindset. This ain't got nothing to do with all that. Go back and watch all that and then argue with what that says, not with what this says. I'm just kind of giving you a reiteration so you can understand why I'm making a point about this likeness. Because it's going to come into play here, especially as far down this rabbit hole as I'm fixing to go with this, because it's going to be extremely controversial. And I know that, and I'm okay with it. Because really, it's not as much about saying you believe or you don't. It's more about saying, well, I can't necessarily prove or disprove any of that. So then you say, well, that's about your feelings. And I say, well, you know, what the Ruach has, I guess you'd say, enlightened me of, if you go watch that about who the light is, then I have just kind of seen some stuff a little different, that if you carry this on out, especially how I'm fixing to lay it out, again, it's not fact. Okay, I'm not trying to make it fact. I'm saying sit it in there, work it around and say, well, it's not going against the word. I'm not fixing to do that. I'm going to go against what you probably have been taught, or maybe your understanding is. That doesn't mean it's against the word. That just means it's against your feelings. I'm not a heretic. I'm not going against the word. There are people that get all kinds of upset about these things that I share. This stuff is deeper than just your feelings. Okay, this is looking at it from a perspective to try to wrap your mind around what actually went on and why it is so important that our likeness, because remember this, it's pretty obvious that Adam is something else. They don't receive, and notice I said they, okay, because it says right here, let them, that's plural, right? Now, this might be where some of y'all say you're bringing your feelings in, that them, more than likely, simply because in the beginning was the word that became flesh, which was the Torah and the perfect example to live, says, do not marry your sister. And it wasn't something that was just given because of the hardness of the heart. Really? When you go back and watch that Genesis 1, you understand something, that it's always been, either you believe he's the beginning and the end, the first and the last, or you don't. My son at 11 asked me, Dad, if I have free will and he knows the beginning and the end, then explain to me how he knows what's going to happen if I hadn't made the decision. I said, that's the part you're missing. He already knows every outcome. They made a movie about it. He's just waiting for you to make the decision. He already knows. But the only thing you have is Barak and curses, nothing else. The light, the Barak, or the curses, the darkness. Go back and watch Genesis 1. Go back and watch Yahuwah is Yahusha. So you can understand this. I'm not trying to battle with any of y'all. I'm trying to say, hey, look at what we've been taught from a different perspective and see if somehow some of this might help wrap your mind around some other things that maybe didn't make that much sense. I get it. I've been there, done that. I thought this. Finally, after 3 years of reading nothing but Genesis 1, 2, and 3, I said, please show me what you want, I beg you, so that I can study something else, in which what he showed me is it's all connected, every bit of it. So, and let them, plural, they're probably created 7 by 7, only because the clean animals went on the ark 7 by 7. Now, I'm not putting them on the same level as animals. I'm just saying Noah knew to make a sacrifice when he came off of the ark. So either he, A, only went on 2 by 2 and he just put something extinct, or B, the clean, as it says, went on 7 by 7, which would make sense here if he made them 7 by 7, them 7 by 7, so that none of the Torah could be transgressed, which was the word at this time, over the fish of the sea. We established why that is first. But we're going to go a little deeper into it because they lived in the water on the earth in Genesis 1:1. Go watch that, please. Don't argue with this. Just go with it for a minute. Understand that heavens is water. That's why you read about water in Genesis 1:2. There's a reason for that. You say man and woman didn't exist in Genesis 1:1. Go read it. We've established this is a remake of what was destroyed by the War of the Angels. Go watch that, and please do not get upset, because I'm trying to establish an even deeper rabbit hole, okay? One that's just, there's some of you that are just going to absolutely lose your bonkers over it, and I apologize. It ain't going to change my position. I've been shown, there's just some things that when you're seen, it's shown to you, he lays it out. None of this goes against Scripture. It just goes against, and it don't go against creation. It just goes against what you've been taught. That's all. The fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and all the earth, and over all the creeping creatures that creep on the ground. And Elohim, the Ruach working through the sun, created the man in his image. Look right here. His image. Okay. He doesn't speak about the likeness anymore. His image. In the image of Elohim, he created him. Male and female, look at this. Together. He created them. Now wait just a minute. Y'all have all been taught that this is, just a little bit more in depth of Adam. None of this happened in Adam. There was a time between Adam and Eve for the animals. Don't say there wasn't. There was time in there. It looks like that, and this is why. But this is the other part that's important about this. This is where going down this rabbit hole is. And Elohim barak them, and Elohim said to them, be fruitful and increase and fill the earth. Now, when you go up here earlier about the animals and the sea and all of that, he tells them to refill in your King James. But over time, people couldn't put that together. Why? And so they just took it out and said, no, creation started in Genesis 1:3. Go watch both of those videos. You'll see what Genesis 1:3 is, what the actual light is. Here, let me do this. I'll go show you. We'll take a minute. Let's do this. Now, that should be sharing that screen. And you should be able to see the light, Genesis 1:3. Now, I've got no way to check it. If you go watch the Genesis 1, if this is showing, this is the part that's missing there. If it's not, then I don't know what y'all are looking at. But anyways, just listen to it out if you need to. So in Hebrew, we read right to left. And if you go watch the Genesis 1 and Yahuwah is Yahusha, you'll see that Bereshit is Emmanuel, Elohim. Elohim with us. He would have to be with all of us, starting with the beginning of creation, because everything after the form taken by the Father, the Ruach, would be the work of the Son and us, the Father working through the Son. So Elohim with us would apply to all of creation, which was long before we came. But anyways, go watch all that so that you can catch up, because this is pretty cool. So when you get to Genesis 1:3, you see that the light that is spoken of is Aleph Ba Resh, or Wa. Aleph Wa Resh is what it is. Pretty cool, huh? The strong, powerful leader, which we established in Genesis 1 and in Yahuwah as Yahusha, is the Son. You can't deny that. Shall be added and secured as the head of man. There's only one head of man, the man. Who is that? The Son. That's it. There is no other. There is no other L forms. There is only the only Son, the firstborn of all creation, the strong and powerful leader that is the head of man. Now, why does it say the head of man? Because everything has always been about the Son and through the Son. Everything. There is no separation. To separate them is to lie to them. To lie to them is to absolutely, positively lose it. They are not separate. I and my Abba are one. Echad. Nothing more. Nothing more. That is it. I'm just saying. Think about it for a minute, please. Nowhere do you see a separation except because of the teaching and understanding that has been given, that the veil is being lifted, or at least it has been for me. I'm trying to help you lift it, not because it's left up to me. This is all Ruach inspired. He'll decide if you're given the eyes to see or ears to hear, but don't come barking at it. Go ask him, can this be true? Because there is only one strong, powerful leader that is the head of man, that is the Son. That is what he done here for 1,000 years. Because look, let's go share another screen right here. Let's look at this one here. Here it is. Now, if I've got this done correctly, and I'm sure I have, The only way I know how to do it. The only difference between the light that we read in Genesis 1:3 and the one that is in Genesis 1:4 that he saw that was good was the hey, I reveal. The only difference. What did he reveal here? Well, what he revealed is that the example of the Son and the word that he teaches is the light, the 2/3. That all those that follow his example shall walk in the light and be separate from the dark, those that do not. Nothing changes. There is nothing new. I am Yahuwah. I never change. Yahushua says, if you follow me, my example, you shall walk in the light and no longer be in the darkness. He's speaking about this right here. Because after the war of the angels, which I established, go again, please look at it and watch. You find out that Emmanuel, Elohim with us, that is man and woman living in the water on the earth with the angels, and Elohim, that Devel killed, that's the only thing he could kill. He can't kill the angels. So how could he be a murderer from the beginning, which means he was in the beginning if he wasn't killing man and woman? This is how we got to this part. Because all those that follow him, his example, shall walk in the light, no longer be in the darkness. The 2/3 angels walk in the light. They already live forever. Now they walk in the light. The demons, the 1/3, they still do too. It's why they go into the lake of fire. The lake of fire becomes their eternal separation from him. But that's what this is. It's never been anything else. It's always been his word. Always. So know that. Because day 4 is when you get the lights that you see onto the world. He says that. That's a different light that they're bringing into the world. Not him. His example. It's always been his example. Show me somewhere in the scripture that it does not say following the Son's example will still get you in the light. Without following his example, you'll still stand in the light. You either walk in the light, which is his example, or you don't. Show me a scripture somewhere that doesn't say that. That says, no, that's not true. No, that's not true. You don't have to do that. Show it to me. I know I've worded that 100 different ways, and I don't know if I've got it right yet. But it doesn't exist. That separation is where the problem has come in throughout all time of teaching. It doesn't matter where you come from. I'm not going after one or the other. I'm just going after the truth, nothing more. But this seems like a huge rabbit hole I'm fixing to go down. Or this may even as well already. I can't help that for you. I apologize. How about that? Just go with me, though, okay? Because this is why it's important. All right, look. This is so important. It's important to know that the Father took the form of a man and created in his image, man and woman, so that they could repopulate the earth. And this is where it gets interesting. Because you jump over here, of course, the heavens were completed, and get into the Sabbath, and he done his work. We all know that the Sabbath was made for man, not the man for Sabbath. Look at this. Pretty cool. Genesis 2:4. These are the births of the heavens and the earth, and they were created in the day that Yahuwah Elohim made earth and heavens. You say, well, it says here that he made earth and heavens. You say, well, yes. I just verified that he is Elohim. It says that Yahuwah Elohim, all things are created by and through the Son. I'm not disagreeing with this. I'm saying what you've been taught about this is off. That's all. This is Yahuwah Elohim. It could have always been that. Period. Because it's the Son made the earth and the heavens. Or you can almost say, well, the garden would be a part of heaven on earth, right? Where the Father, the Ruach, the Spirit of Elohim, that Yahuwah is in that form that made the heavens and the earth, a place that he resides before he came in the flesh. Yahusha, salvation. Yahu, salvation. Yahu, salvation. Yahuwah. Come on, I know this is difficult, and maybe you feel like my foot's on your throat, and I'm not trying to, seriously. Sometimes the truth just hurts real bad, and it feels heavy, and I get it. It doesn't change it. Now, no shrub of the field was yet on the earth, huh? Well, wait a minute, we just read about that, and you say, no, yeah, this is telling about it. No, this ain't the same creation. Plant of the field had yet sprung up. Well, wait a minute. We just seen and read that it had. For Yahuwah Elohim had not set rain on the earth, and there was no man to till the ground. What ground? The garden. Where was Adam put? In the garden. We just read that creation was done. Did he put it on hold? You say, no, he's telling about when Adam was created. Yes, I agree. But the Genesis 1:26 creation had already been created. That's the part that people miss. They put the two together. They want to say, oh, no, we came from Adam and Eve. Okay. We as air breathers started somewhere there. But these people in Genesis 1:26 are the likeness, the image, because this image would only be no likeness. We would only get the image from being a man. But here in a minute, he's going to go from a man to Adam. All right. There's a separation there. Why did they not call the other ones Adam? Why did they not say Adam and Eve? No, don't come in here with all this pre-wife BS with Adam. Lilith. Don't come in with that, please. Okay? Just open your mind and just look at it for what I'm showing you that it is. Okay? You can say he didn't create them 7 by 7 if you want, but to not create them 7 by 7 would be to go against his word, whether you believe it was in the beginning or not. But a mist went up from the earth, Genesis 2:6. The earth was watered, the entire surface of the ground. What earth? You say, well, it was the whole earth. I say, well, okay, but is there not an earth that we already seen that the trees, herbs, and grasses came up on? But wouldn't it be interesting, because I've never dove into it, so before anybody starts yelling, no, it's not, just be interesting if that word Eretz right there had some sort of tie back to the garden. But anyways, verse 7. And Yahweh Elohim formed the man out of the dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Now look, isn't that interesting? Well, we didn't read nothing about that in Genesis 1:26, did we? Nor did we read anything here about being in the likeness. See a separation there? Maybe you'll see it here in a minute. And the man became a living being. Now, we've discussed already twice that should be living man, living soul. If that's living being, then them others, like animals and stuff, should be living animals that breathe on the land. Because we know the ones in the water wouldn't be living beings, would they? They didn't call the Genesis 1:26 living beings, did they? And Yahuwah Elohim planted a garden in Eden. You say, well, look, he just now planted a garden. Okay. To the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Now I'm just curious about something. If he had just formed the man, and the only thing that he put in there was the man, not man and woman, not them he had formed, he had formed. And out of the ground Yahuwah Elohim made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, with the tree of life in the midst of the garden, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now think about something. This ain't no ordinary garden. It can't be. Or these trees wouldn't be here. The tree of life and knowledge. Those two wouldn't be in there because we don't have them now. So this is something else. Okay. Something completely different. But it's interesting that the Son, the Yahuwah, the likeness and form that all things are created by and through of Elohim, is the one who's doing this. Because it's almost like Adam, as we're fixing to find out when we go through these other things, has a closer relationship, if you will, simply because he got the breath of lives. He's not a remake. He's something else. And of course, we read about the different rivers. I ain't here to talk about it, all that. Okay. And Elohim commanded, saying, eat of every tree of the garden. Who did he command? The man, not them. The man, right? What's it say right here? And Yahuwah Elohim took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and guard it. The man. Well, now wait just a minute. When the man got kicked out, is it not guarded by an angel? So the man's so powerful it takes an angel, but the man is so powerful they don't need an angel? Or does that guard it and work it? Maybe that has something else different to it. You know, maybe the guard it had more to do with the command of not waking up to the lies of the world and walking in that darkness. Maybe that's what he's to guard. Y'all work on that. And Yahuwah Elohim commanded the man, not them, the man, saying, eat of every tree of the garden. Well, did he not just tell the Genesis 1:26 people that? Absolutely. But do not eat the tree of knowledge of good and evil. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall certainly die. Now I'm curious about something. How come he hasn't told him anything about ruling over the fish of the sea? He ain't said nothing to him about that. Yahuwah Elohim said, it is not good for man to be alone. Now remember, these animals were brought to him and named. None were found to be an helpmeet. I am going to make a helper for him. So now he needs a helper as his counterpart. The King James says, and help meet. The part I like about that, and help meet, as opposed to this counterpart being just real general because of this upside down world that we're in. The and help meet is really more accurate when it's a gift from Elohim, just simply because that the and help meet is to do the things that opposable thumb, I guess you'd say, does that these other animals that we use can't do. That and we can love on animals all we want and like people are doing, but at the end of the day, there's nothing like the love of those that love us back, that have that separation back together, Elohim Echad, that they ask us to do. And from the ground, Yahuwah Elohim formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called each living being, that should be again creature, that's what it's named. And they're like, look, see? Like, well, wait just a minute. That Genesis 1:26 point blank says that the animals were created before. Why can y'all not see that there's something else going on here? Why? So the man gave names to all the livestock and to the birds of the heavens and to every beast of the field. For the man there was not found a helper for him as his counterpart. and help meet. So Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall on the man, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. The rib which Yahweh Elohim had taken from the man, he made into wound man. And he brought her to the man. And he said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one is called wound man, woman, because she was taken out of man. Now I know that they go on and say, oh, well, that was a rib. And I mean, it's pretty evident that it was just a shade more than just a rib that was taken. Okay. For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, Echad, and they shall become one flesh. That is Echad. You say, yeah, well, they have two different minds. Not if he leads according to the example and she follows. He doesn't treat her like a slave or a servant. It is a love back and forth. That's not what the Father asks. He does not ask that. He only asked us to love him. And to love him is to follow his way. What did Yahushua say? I am the way. And they were both naked, and the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed. Why were they not ashamed? Nobody told them. Nobody said, you know you're not supposed to dress like that, right? I mean, if you don't ever tell a kid, nobody ever tells anybody, and you have a whole community that just grows up from the time they're kids, nobody will ever be ashamed of it because they'll never look at it from that aspect. It's only when the hormones kick in and all that other mess, the beguilement, y'all try to separate that too, that all this other comes in. And so he cleaves to her. Why? Because his mom took care of his dad and him, and his wife learned to take care of him, and now he cleaves to her, and she takes care of him, and in return he takes care of her like her dad did. He don't beat on her. She's a woman. She's a gift. He don't beat on her. She don't beat on him. They work together, Echad, working with each other. But they are something different, because look right over here. And the Nahash was more crafty than all the lives of the field which Yahuwah Elohim had made. He said to the woman, is it true that Elohim has said, do not eat of every tree of the garden? Is it true? The woman said to the Nahash, we are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. What of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden? Elohim has said, do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die. And the Nahash said to the woman, you shall certainly not die. Why you reckon he told her that? That deception runs bad, because when you go to your King James, again, that's where you learn about the Adam there. You notice they just kept it as man. They're trying to tie those two back, because so many people say, well, why does this say Adam and why does that not say just man? And I agree, it does say man. But the reason the King James gives you a description difference is because Adam is something different, okay? Those in Genesis 1:26 are something different. And the reason they are is because of that likeness as opposed to that breath of lives. There's something different there. Even if you tie all the way back to Adam, all the way back, you find out that the children of Yisrael, that line from Abraham on, leads all the way back to that bloodline of Adam. You say, well, okay, I believe that. Well, good. But then there's a question you have to throw in there. And this one is real big. But it's going to be like a second question to some of the answers I'm going to try to throw at you. When it says all are corrupt, except Noah and his three sons. And there are those that say, yeah, Noah was the only one pure, even his sons wasn't pure. It's like, no, dude, Noah knew the word, which didn't become Torah till Moshe was given it so that they could have some sort of guidance before he came in and set the example, the word that always was until the separation. Keep in mind that Genesis 1:26 was never separated from him. That likeness they live, that word, that likeness we're trying to become. What is that? His example. It's a little bit different when you kind of look at it from that perspective. When you look at it from the perspective of, well, now hold on just a minute. I got to ask this question. You mean to tell me that all this time we've been kind of misled as to who this is? You know? I'm like, yeah, I know it's disheartening. It is to me too. I get it. I promise you I do. But it doesn't change what it is. I'm going to stop there just because I've got enough people be curious at this point. Curious to know, are them people in Genesis 1:26 really different? Do they have a likeness? Is there a walk that they're on that somehow has carried all the way through? Because remember, when the boys, that would be the three sons of Noah, buried their grandfather, that would be Methuselah, who had taught them the word, then they had to go find them wives. Now, what we know from Scripture is that two of those bloodlines, the giants came through. Rav Skiba showed us that there's definitely giants in the line of Ham. Makes sense. And there's one or two from the line of Japheth, but there is none through the line of Seth. And there's a reason for that. Our Messiah came through the line of Seth. Now, were the other two boys the direct line? Absolutely. But did they choose wives that were corrupt? Absolutely. Here's how you know why. All were corrupt except Noah and his three sons. That word corrupt is abominations. He tells us, I cannot reside with man no more because they are not flesh. They were not natural to the way they were created. So he could no longer reside with them, except Noah and his three sons. What happened? Here's the question, and this is what we'll get into next week. Since we know Ham got a corrupt wife that brought the giant bloodline through that's spoken of after the flood, and we know Japheth has got one or two, one for sure, two probably, and none can tie back to Seth. Where did Seth find his uncorrupted wife? That's next week's dig. I thank you, Abba, for this opportunity to share your inspired word. And I ask, please, in Yahushua's name, that those that are listening, that they be calm and patient and just take some of this in, because it's a lot and it's heavy. And I thank you for everything. In your son Yahushua's name I pray. Amen and Amen.